Hi, my name's Bill Smallman. Welcome to my website. I designed it sort of like a book proposal. And the subject matter, believe it or not, can be put on a license plate cover, what I recently had made. And if you can see it, it says, Paradise is the planet Earth. Anyway, I wanted to just give a brief autobiography talk about myself a little bit, and then I'll go into more detail about the book. You know, hopefully to meet a book agent that thinks that the book will be a success, like I do. Anyway, I grew up in Marin County. Was very lucky. Both my parents were greatest generation parents. I'm a baby boomer, and my dad fought in the 6th Division of the Marine Corps, the Battle of Okinawa, World War II. They bought a home on the eastern side of Mount Tamalpais, so my backyard was Mount Tamalpais, and I just gorgeous open space. One time I rode my bicycle all the way from my parents' backyard to the coast to Stinson Beach, and it was just so great. I was one of the first kids that rode bicycles on Mount Tamalpais, and that was, most of you know, that was the birthplace of the mountain bike. And I was very much into science. I love science. I had attention deficit disorder, I believe. They didn't know about it back then, but I was really a bad reader. But I had subscriptions to National Geographic, National Wildlife. I just really loved environmentalism, addicted to watching Jacques Cousteau, et cetera, et cetera. I put a microscope and a chemistry set in I had a nice big bedroom and a big closet, and I made my closet a laboratory with a microscope, and just kind of escaped in my little separate world. But I've always really loved science, and I always felt in my heart that I would do something really big with in regards to the environmental movement, which I really was passionate about. And I feel that this book is it. That this is my dream. And then what else? Well, anyway, after I needed to get out of college, and I graduated as a major in civil engineering, and for the past 30 years I've been designing and building water infrastructure in Northern California. And from being a grunt in the field to being the civil engineer for mainly water main replacements. And then I also I served 10 years on a water district board in this local area. I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains now, by the way, and I served for 10 years. Wasn't very enjoyable, but I learned a lot about politics, and which was very helpful also in a lot of the subject matter in this book. So anyway, I'll just show you around here a little bit and what I thought I would do. I want you to meet my dog, Trova. It's a golden retriever. Come on, Trova. Come on. No, this way. Come on. No, come on. Down this way. So I'm extremely handy. I do any construction trade. I've done a lot of the work on this house, and then I built this little patio recently. And anyway, my thought was I'll make a fire, I'll sit here, set up a camera, and then go through the outline of the book. The book's 12 chapters. They're named after the month of the year, and each chapter is approximately 10,000. It's going to be 10,000 words each. So the entire book's about 120,000 words, and the title is Paradise Found. And I'll just show the backyard too. I made that tree for it, and then there's a trampoline. My daughter does aerial silks. I made a thing, so she got pretty good at aerial silks, and that's fun. And then you can see a lot of work going on here. So anyway, enough about me, and I got outline, and I'll describe the book. I really think that this book is going to change the world, because everything just seemed to fit in place, and I really feel that I was the right person to write it with an open mind. And I've had a talent to really be able to think out of the box, and I know a lot about science, and also I tie together a lot of other very interesting things. But why it's titled Paradise Found is making a play on the book John Milton's Paradise Lost, but our paradise is here. And so my book is that the earth is our paradise. And that's, so anyway, stick around. I'll make a little fire here, and then I'll start discussing the book and go over each chapter. Thanks. Okay, I'm back. Again, this book is about basically creating a paradise on the entire earth, or preserving and protecting. And what's, I mean, I wanted to write a book that was, sort of a environment, I wanted to write a important environmental book that would solve environmental issues. No matter if I've participated on local environmental issues as well, and this, I decided I wanted to write a book, so I picked a topic that is basically epically huge, and I felt that I really felt that this book, I wanted to, desperately wanted to make it all inclusive. So really, it's, one of the key concepts of this book is that the earth as a paradise raises our spiritual existence. And so, I know that there's a lot of people that do not like religion at all, and for good reason. There's so many. I was actually surprised how many bad apples there are, involved with religion. As with any, just there's so many wrong paths that I think people are taking. So anyway, I tried to make this book so more of, obviously I have to voice my own opinion, but I encourage people. I think it's be helpful for people to think about this idea, and I think it's basically the idea of all idea that it's not only solving all the environmental issues, but also solving all the societal issues as well. So well, anyway, I had to dive back into the, basically, the story of Adam. I believe that the story of Adam and Eve is an allegorical account provided by God, and it wasn't a specific place on earth where, and I think it was the reason why we have that story is so that the people on earth would strive towards that ultimate goal. And I believe that all the struggles that we face on earth are such that develops our spiritual, and also, the temptations. We learn how to resist all the temptations, and we learn how to overcome our struggles. And a lot of this is actually spoken about in the Bible, that we need that to develop our spiritual growth. So yeah, there's. So again, I'm going on. I'm making fun. Playing on the book by Paradise Lost by John Milton, and that our entire earth is the paradise, and bringing to the discussion of how we will get there, and here's why. Here's the ultimate reason why, not just because of our our physical health, but also that to grow our spirits. And the main one of the main goals is to get everybody to agree, which is which is very hard to do. So I so again, the book is 12 chapters. I thought it was a cool idea. I made it, each chapter's named after the month of the year. And then so I'm going to try to go through the main topics of each chapter, starting with January. And January is basically the introduction to this idea. And sort of in the beginning, I lay out seven issues which would qualify. People would say, okay, the Earth's definitely a paradise if it could solve all these various issues. And number one is all creatures, including us, are happy and making the best of their lives. Number two is all have adequate food, shelter, and habitat for maximum longevity. Some sort of an important point that carnivorous activity is allowed, but the hunting of animals at the top of the food chain is avoided. I believe that the spirits of the higher food chain animals have more of an opportunity to reincarnate as a human in their next life. So their life experiences are more important than, say, perhaps a deer or a fish. And for example, most of the indigenous tribes of the Pacific Northwest revered, and a lot of other cultures around the planet revere these animals by placing them, well, anyway, the indigenous in the Northwest, and that's the reason why they were placed on totem poles. And they never were really hunted out of necessity for food. Number three, all have optimum spiritual growth, and no one is given a free ride to overcome their own struggles, because this is an important learning process for our spiritual health. And money and attaining material objects is not required for a happy life, but people are free to obtain wealth that's provided to those of merit only, not distributed fairly. No poverty. The environment of the earth is the optimum for health and has a large amount of open space critical to optimize spiritual growth. And there are cities and suburbs built with infrastructure not only to minimize environmental harm, but to accommodate a thriving culture. Number four, I should include that equal opportunity. There's definitely, everybody needs to be able to get a well-paying job if they work hard towards that. So I go and I expand on the significance of a paradise in more detail as why it's vital for our spiritual health and development, and I give a brief autobiography about myself and some detailed attention to why I was able to write this book. And then finally, I give one or two paragraphs of a personal story to sort of introduce the subject matter of the next chapters, and then briefly describe the content of the chapters. So I go into February. I can't remember what the story was for February, but February is sort of a deep topic, and it's titled Physics and Metaphysics. And metaphysics is the Greek word meta is for behind, so everything that's behind physics. And physics is basically a science that explains everything. It explains everything. It's the root. It's the heart of all science. Everything that we can do. And I guess what's probably it gets heavy because we're all made of atoms and molecules. So literally, all the atoms and molecules that is speaking to you, that comprise my body, you know, although it would be infinite number of physics equations, but I would, you know, I'm part of we're all part of the physical universe, and so I made up a term that we're all biological robots, and but inside of all of us is our spirit, and we're part of the physical world, and the purpose of that is for us to grow spiritually. And that's, I give some ideas, I expand on that idea, and then the reason why this is important, again, because we need a paradise. We can't live in a horrible area, like say in the slum of a city, and not be spiritually inspired. So we need to, or we're so blessed to live on the planet Earth as a spiritual growing center, basically. And that's sort of the angle. That's a big part of the book. And well, then another a big part of this chapter is talking about how science, in my opinion, has become sort of a form of idolatry. In other words, people are looking toward to science, and there's so many. I list a whole long list of scientific and technological advances that aren't helpful towards us at all. In other words, they're the opposite, and some of them, I believe will lead to a hell on earth. For to give a couple examples, I'm thinking of the Steven Spielberg film called Ready Player One. It's an animated film. You don't have to have seen the movie to understand this. But anyway, it's an animated film, and the kid lives in this, overcrowded city, and he lives in a trailer park. There's trailers stacked up on each other, and so, but he's able to jump up on a treadmill and put on his virtual headset and totally escape into this entirely different world. In other words, the message is, who cares about the planet? Who cares about our environment? And when we can jump into this virtual world. And then I go into, obviously, I go into, Mark Zuckerberg's idea about creating this metaverse and that sort of thing. And then also there's, there's people that want to, let's go build a city on Mars. Why? It might be fun to go there in the beginning. I think Mars might be a great place to go and mine, build mines, raw materials, and manufacture products and bringing them back to Earth. But nobody's going to really, the novelty will wear off because everything's going to be in, has to be enclosed. So I think we're trying to escape. And then also I explain, in detail why we'll never be able to, in our physical bodies, we'll never be able to go at the speed of light or faster than the speed of light. The speed of light is a constant in the physical nature. And even if we could go to the speed of light, we need to realize that we're blessed here now. And that, to top it off, recently there was some sightings by NASA that, a UFO or whatever, that they tracked this light. Well, anyway, the object was able to accelerate faster than the speed of the sound. So physically, they couldn't explain how it could do that. But moreover, it didn't cause a sonic boom. So those sightings are not, they're not made up of atoms and molecules. In other words, they're part of the metaphysical universe. they're part of, angels. They're part of the spiritual realm of higher power. And to think about, if we ever are able uh, to expand to that higher level, we're not gonna, we're not, if we do have eternal lives and we expand to this higher plane level, there's not going to be Darth Vader killing people, and there's not going to be the Empire Strikes Back. There's not going to be Star Trek and on their 5-year mission. None of that is it's all bullshit. It's a pipe dream. So, and I do believe that people and cultures are so fixated that is, we're going to expand to that realm, but we're not. And those people need to be, that I believe that this book will show people that no, and I do believe that, perhaps there will be a second coming, and that for that reason, because we can't keep focused. In other words, we can't focus on all that stuff and just trash the planet Earth and think that we're gonna perfect things using science. And there's really a long list of scientific, and from genetically modifying foods and creating the coronavirus, and so many scientific endeavors where it's another word for junk science, or mad scientists, that we do not need to do. So enough on that chapter. I think I don't want spend too much time, but I want to start the book off with an important chapter. So these other ones, so in March, the chapter's titled "The Common Ground." And unity is absolutely the most important thing that we need. We need everybody to agree on, what this paradise is. And interestingly, I read those 7 issues before that would qualify the earth as a paradise, and everybody would agree to those. Where the problem comes in is that people, it's about arguing about the means, how to get to those. And so I go into a lot of different details and on that, and there's been so many different, throughout history, of groups. No group is political agenda is correct unless it includes everybody. And it's every time there's been a large opposing group that didn't agree, and it's not just about being democratic and not having over 50% agree to one thing. It needs to be 99%. And if you think of Hitler and Mein Kampf, that was only about, he felt that his Aryan people and Austrian culture was suffering from the Jews, and well, and I go into, there's other chapters down below that describe that people developed this sort of hate. The Ku Klux Klan, they would get in groups, and they would, they didn't want the African Americans changing their culture. So nobody's culture, but people are being fooled today because of the globalists, the global elitists, and they're sort of the new group. And most people don't even understand the definition of the word fascism, but the better definition of the word fascism is not from, you won't read it anywhere, especially on Wikipedia. The definition is simply, it's a right wing, Hitler, Mussolini, Mussolini, but basically it's just forcing a political agenda on people that don't agree with it. It really, it's, you know, it's, I go into more detail on that, but the main topic of March, March's chapter, Common Ground, is, and then it's also looking at ways to create a more effective brainstorming. And my short, 10-year stint and serving as a director in politics, it was very helpful for me to compose this chapter. So let's go to April. I didn't want to try to make this video too long. So April's, the title of April's chapter is Paradise Found. And then this one I go into even more detail about the history of a paradise, the Garden of Eden, and again why the paradise is important for us to build our spiritual life, and then I go more into detail about some of the scientific, transhumanism, and just that sort of thing. And but yeah, so I explain why we don't need this, but I give some practical ideas about what tools of, how we can actually, succeed and at this. Well, let's just go to May. And May's titled The Environmental Movement. And the gist of this chapter is to make I really, fell in love with the environmental movement when I was a kid. It's all about making the environmental movement more effective. And I give a brief history of the people that influenced me, and for those people that aren't, familiar with some of the, mainly the John Muir, Rachel Carson, some of the major people that really started the increased environmental movement in the 60s. And then, but I again, this is all about my input in this book is to make the environmental more effective, because what I discovered is, working in construction and being involved in water politics, is there's corruption, and wherever there's money, there seems like there's corruption. So there's a lot of people that are making money, and they're using environmental issues as a political agenda, and it's sidetracking people. And then one of the things that I think is really my signature contribution in this chapter is that, believe it or not, there's conservative environmentalists and there's liberal environmentalists, and I'm always been sort of a middleman on that ground, because I know they both want the same thing. Because as a conservative, I know, God, they love to fish and hunt and get outdoors, and I understand the liberal side. They're science educated and that sort of thing. I'm both, so we need to get those two groups together, and I think that's a good thing in this book, again, to build more unity, per the March's chapter about common ground. I think I mentioned, anyway. So, but that's pretty much all. I'm not sure if I missed anything important on that. So, and then I give some, anyway. Well, I won't discuss that too much more. But all these, I'm trying to make this video a little bit short. I'm just trying to give sort of the idea behind each chapter. And then June is titled The Family, and which I say is basically one of the most important institutions. And I do believe that most men and women do take having kids seriously, by getting married and raising a family, and it's absolutely the most important thing. Except today, you know it's really, I do believe overpopulation is a problem. So I do believe that people should be educated. Hey, if you don't really, if you're not prepared to raise a family and have children, then don't. And I think that kids need to be educated that it's underside. And then I also discuss the fact that I truly believe that homosexuality is completely natural. I do believe, that gay couples should get married. Absolutely, I think it's a absolutely an improvement on human society. But as a naturalist, I do believe that it's just sort of it's a natural instinct to not have children. And I mean, growing up, I had aquariums, and sometimes I'd have fish in there that they wouldn't have any problem with overpopulating, and then sometimes I did. And then watching animals, they've always had trouble breeding certain species of animals in captivity, and all animals, including us, I believe, sort of sense that because it's overpopulated. So I do believe that homosexuality is natural. And in this chapter I go in. I believe that Planned Parenthood is a complete failure. I believe that kids should be discouraged to have sex. I think we make too big of a deal of sex, and kids are lured into it. And I think they should be educated to the fact that in order to become enlightened, and that's one thing I think I forgot to mention, but in this book, in order to become enlightened, I think we have to detach ourselves from our physical bodies. And I think our biological robots are programmed to have sex. And that, I mean, if you ask an elderly person, I think I mentioned in the sentence in the book that if you asked an elderly person, would you rather have a normal bowel movement or a normal sexual orgasms, and they would pick the former. And it's just part of there's nothing wrong with having a healthy, natural, sexual, digestive body, but not to make such a big deal about it that you either get addicted to it or you're so attached to it. Because when we all die, we have to, more, if we want to increase our souls, to detach our attachments to a lot of those things. And I think anyway, that's June, the family. And it's so important because again, for this book is to create, we're talking about creating a human, or us procreating. So we want our children, and it's all about having a life, having a experience in a paradise, and to look forward to becoming enlightened. So anyway, I'm gonna move to, and I'm gonna start July, the next topic, in a different location. Hi, I'm back in San Francisco, and behind me is the mouth of the San Francisco Bay. The fog's coming in, but normally you can see Mount Tamalpais in the background. I can see the top part of it actually. And just over that hill is one of the main wastewater treatment plant, one of the main wastewater treatment plants for the city. And it dumps tens of millions of gallons of water every single day. And I'm just mentioning that because on my website on the supplemental tab, I have a short story which kind of shows my style of writing, but the title of the short story is the inevitable restoration, and it's all about if we recycled, we have the technology now. It's the same technology as desalination. If we recycled all the wastewater in all the areas, especially here in the Bay Area, that we could restore the Hetch Hetchy Valley, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's just like a second Yosemite Valley. It's just gorgeous, but they dammed it, and it's basically the water supply for all the peninsula and San Francisco. Bottom line, about a third of all water is wastewater, and they also collect storm drain water, but it's a huge amount of water. They've almost developed a way, but anyway, I think if you have the time to read that story, I think you'll enjoy it. So I want to go into July, and July's chapter is titled Love and Hate, and I go on the concept that love is the all-powerful energy of the universe from God, that we need to learn how to harness. We need to build our spiritual health to learn how to harness. And then hate is just basically our inherent displeasure of, overcoming our struggles in the physical universe. But hate is hate, and everything, all of our struggles is inherently necessary for us to develop our spiritual existence. And I can't recite it. There's a passage in the book of James that basically says, is your life full of struggles and temptations? Then rejoice, because after you learn how to overcome struggles and learn how to resist temptations, then your character, your spiritual existence will become complete. So that's, I'm going to go on that premise in order, and this is also important again, that we need a paradise to be a beautiful area that inspires us, but also has us move on and learning how to overcome our struggles. Maybe using as an example, if you take up running or jogging, or if you take up hard labor and hard work, in the beginning you hate it. you don't like all the pain and the struggle. But as you get better and better and better at it, as an athlete practices and practices and practices, that the beauty of it is that they develop, and they get more in touch with they develop their spiritual growth and their physical bodies. So, I think it's an ongoing process that we transform that energy that we don't like, and we channel it into love, and we get better and better at that. But the sad thing is that people don't learn that, and they hold the negative energy within them, and I believe that there's so many people that they have so much hate in their hearts that they're unable to think clearly. And so that's, I think that again, to discuss this in terms of the book about creating a paradise, that we need people to not contain that hate for anybody or any thing. You really don't have to. A lot of the things that you hate are, it's really just a waste of your time. It's a waste of your life to hate anybody or anything. So, and that's really the gist of July, and that I give more examples, and it's just really all about, you know, unifying, and you know, my belief that we need to live and be blessed, live in this paradise to cultivate love and learn how to grow or become enlightened. So August is all about water. It's titled Water, and more and more, I mean, a lot of the water molecule is amazing. Without it, there's no life. And you know, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, seculars, you know, oh well, let's just go find a planet with, you know, more with water. You know, we'll look in the universe to locate ones with water. Well, guess what? They're probably, you know, just like us in a situation like that. You know, if you're not, you're gonna have to open your, you know, I believe it's just so amazing that just the water molecule itself is just so amazing, and then how it facilitates life. You have to believe in a higher power, you know, and it's there's a lot of different things that I don't think people really realize how amazing the water is, and how you know, our bodies and how they are made. Is, you know, science will never be able to explain it. You know, the science is only good. Only thing that our science is really good for is explaining the actions of atoms and molecules in the physical universe, and that's it. So I talk about that a bit, but the main part of this chapter, I go through my personal history about water, because I think, well, not only is it's sort of entertaining, and it's also helpful to look at. Well, anyway, just again briefly, I graduated as a civil engineer. I've done all from digging ditches to drafting plans for water main replacements, to estimating large construction projects, being a senior estimator for all water and wastewater infrastructure, and serving 10 years on a water district board. And I go through a lot of the you know, different, and then designing water infrastructure is will be very important for our paradise. And we need, as for example, restoring the Hetch Hetchy Valley, and using advanced recycled wastewater treatment plants, just things like that. And I go through a lot of the detail about my experience serving on a water district, to show some of how it ties in actually with the rest of the book about a lot of the politics that people really don't realize. How, you know, the politics of water is also really, we have to find a way that we do design environmentally friendly water infrastructure. So you know, there's a lot of the best water and wastewater systems are a lot more complicated than, and by designing the most effective ones, I mean designing the ones that are not only effective, but they're the best use of the public's money. September is titled Viewpoint Rights, and you know, I sincerely believe, you know, growing up in the 60s, that, you know, the Civil Rights Act was a major milestone. But today, I want to almost expand on that we're in a stage where it's no longer about your race anymore. It's about your viewpoint. And And like I said, no political entity is right unless it includes everybody's viewpoint. And it's really sad to see, the global elitists sort of push an agenda and try to censor other people's viewpoints on certain topics. And the reality is that effective brainstorming it takes everybody's input, because what I will show, and I'll go into more detail in this book, that they're 100% wrong, and they'll lead to the opposite of a paradise on earth. It will eventually become a living hell on the planet. We'll destroy the planet if they just keep on going with their schemes, and a lot of that is because a lot of the people involved with that, you'll hear the statements, I believe in science, or I follow science. They don't really know what science is. Again, science really only explains, again, the physical, your atoms and molecules of your body. It doesn't touch any of the metaphysical universe. So again, my main argument about the book is that we were blessed to live on the paradise, and to not do some of these scientific endeavors and technological advancements are not helpful at all, and they're diverting us towards a hell. Again, we're not going to be able to travel the speed of light. We're not going to need to make a settlement on Mars. We're not going to have to make a big spaceship like on Wall-E, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to. We don't need to genetically modified foods. We don't need to create viruses. The list is really long, and I really try to include all of them. And people need to wake up to no longer no longer support these, I'm going to call even though the science that they perform is very complex, they're still, in my opinion, they're quacks, because their science isn't really leading to any helpful things for society. It's really, to me, it's junk science, because the final product or final thing that they are achieving is junk. It's not like they're stupid or anything, but it's just they're not helping. Again, but I'll just finish talking about this chapter. Again, it's all about not censoring anybody. There's always the correct path includes everyone. And again, throughout history, if there's ever a group that thinks that they're right and they gain power, they're wrong. And the global, I dedicated, that's the next chapter actually, about globalism. So let's get into that. So October is nationalism and globalism, and in reality, my solution, what would be much better, and I believe is the correct path, is to embrace nationalism, borders, language, and cultures of all the different countries, and that promotes diversity. And diversity really is one of the things in nature that makes us so much stronger. But in other words, each country would develop their own particular paradise within their borders, and then if all the countries succeed, then the earth would be a paradise. The problem is we need to figure out a better institution than the United Nations, which, in my opinion, is a complete failure. And so is the economic forums that they have, the G3 thing. All these globalist elites are really not incorporating. In my opinion, what we do need is we need all countries to, have fair trade. They need to be completely fair with each other, and we need to reward the countries that do have better. Stop it! This, by the way, is a very popular place to take your dog. It's a great place to take. Where did I leave off? So, so that takes us into November, and November is titled "Creation and Evolution versus Evolution." And evolution really isn't a science. It's a very intelligent observation of not taking anything away from Charles Darwin, but it's an intelligent observation of nature, and there is evolution, and because there's evolution, there could also be de-evolution, which I feel that the human society will de-evolve if the global elitists have their way, and that's making people they're not. I think with the example I wanted to say is, I think I remember when I was in my 20s and I went on a backpacking trip, and my friend's older sister was going to UC Davis, and then we went, and she was majoring in vet or some, and we got to tour this facility, and it had all the birds of prey in cages. And it's very depressing. all the very great, eagles and hawks and everything, they're all put in cages. Well, that's because they could study them and they control them, but that all the birds would get their, fair amount of food and separated. So, but I'm using that example because they're removed from nature. They're not out in the elements of nature, and they're not soaring through the canyon and hunting for prey or whatever. They're removed from the struggles. So in other words, they're if generations and generations of birds are kept in cages, and maybe they take them out once in a while, they will de-evolve because they're not being exposed to the nature, and so and that's, maybe you can make an argument that capitalism versus communism, that people are so worried about making sure that everybody's got money and resources, versus capitalism where you're rewarded on your own merit. There's something to be said that basically ties back into what I'm saying about that we need to have fair opportunity. When there was when there really was racism and there wasn't equal opportunity, that's horrible. That needs to be completely eliminated. But we need to have, again, the countries to compete fairly, but we also need to have equal opportunity for everybody. But we absolutely do not need to try to provide something for somebody that is able to work and to on their own. So and then again I go into more about how some of these quack scientists, and I think what really I started writing about this, and then I improved it after reading Eric Metaxas's book about Is Atheism Dead? And I think I went to the Wikipedia page on abiogenesis, and then I saw, okay, this is the science, the evolutionary biologists they're working on trying to figure out the origin of life. So immediately on the top front corner is these pictures of these hydrothermal vents under the ocean, and I just immediately knew, okay, this is really quack science. Obviously they're going to pick a place under this mysterious place under the ocean where nobody could ever go. But these scientists haven't come up with anything. They in the beginning they put they figured, oh, there's a lot of lightning back then, and with the water they were able to make an amino acid. They were slightly able to make a RNA molecule, but they were unable to make a single cell. And then even if they did make a single cell organism, there's no way to even come close to what we've been developed into, the human body. No way. There's no possible way. It's right off the just looking at this, I knew right away, and I started writing about that. It's ridiculous, and they've been trying to study this for over 50 years, and they believe that life did arise from physical matter without the help of, well, you guessed it, God or a higher power. It had to, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that these scientists are going to be helpful to society, and so I think that was pretty much it. I mean, but then talking about creation, it actually some of the events of the Bible, we don't know. We have no idea. I mean, over 2,000 years ago and beyond, we have no idea. I mean, I truly believe that there was that a lot of that stuff did happen, except for I don't believe that Adam and Eve happened literally, but there must have been some sort of major intervention with God, and not just Christianity and Judaism, but it could have been all the religions, that there was intervention to people to set them on, which I argue to set them on this path of towards living righteous lives and becoming enlightened. And so that's sort of what November's going to be about, and then December I'll film at a different location, and that title is Good versus Evil. I think finishing up here, I think what's serious now, and I don't think we've ever, I think that the earth has succeeded on having people move into the next life ever since biblical times. It has, but I do see this time is serious because we have so many people thinking that, oh, we're gonna solve all our problems with science, and I'm here to say that we're not with this book. That we need to be blessed. We need to preserve and protect the planet Earth, the paradise of Earth. So I'll see you, and then we'll finish up on December for the last chapter. Okay, welcome back. I want to go over the final chapter, December, and the title is Good versus Evil. It kind of expands on July's chapter about I had love versus hate, and we're located at the South Fork of the American River in Coloma, the rapids called Troublemaker. Anyway, this is where we camped for years and years, every Labor Day for about 10 years, and this is where I met my future wife. Anyway, yeah, good versus evil. I want, first starting out with the chapter again, I want to reiterate that good is based on the energy of love, and love comes from God, and it's everything. It's part of our spiritual development, and that evil is about hate, and it comes from hate, and hate is the inherent energy from living in the physical universe, but it's necessary for us to develop our spiritual existence. So I then take the chapter into, again, I want to expand on a lot of areas in science that aren't helping humanity in any way, that we're not are not helpful towards developing our spiritual existence, and are against creating a paradise on earth. So I wanted to take the subject of transhumanism a little bit further, and I wanted to maybe sort of have a hypothetical, I'll make a sort of a science fiction story for you. This might be something that Philip K. Dick would have liked to write a book about. But let's say that Elon Musk and his wife, they are 90 years old and they're close to death, and they wanted to develop a system such that they would remove their brain and spinal cords and put them in a special tank. And the fluids that would circulate around their brains and spinal cords would basically be able to keep them alive forever. And that their brains would be connected to, thousands and thousands of fiber optic cables that would all connect to all the neurons in your entire body. And those would be all connected to the metaverse, Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse. There's a jellyfish, it's called the immortal jellyfish, that exists, and it actually, scientists believe that it will last forever. In other words, there's an organism that can live forever in the ocean just because of the conditions. It goes through its life cycle and it develops these polyps. But anyway, the main concept is this living organism can basically live forever. So that's sort of assuming that you could put Elon Musk's and his wife's brain and spinal cord in a solution and keep it alive forever. So anyway, they would be in this system hooked into the metaverse, but they would also be able to change the environment that they live in. In other words, they would basically be the new Adam and Eve, because they could live in it. They could say, oh, let's get on a sailboat and sail to Hawaii, and it would all their feelings. They would have all their feeling of touch, smell, sight, everything. They would be living in an entire world, electronic world, and the people that are living as employees they could just immerse themselves into that world as well and contact them. So what I'm describing to you is what I believe is what hell would actually be like, and the reason why is because, let's say that this succeeds, and Elon and his wife have, and it's called the Elon Musk Heaven Center, and it's in Utah someplace. And more people that join, they have their brains and spinal cords put into these special tanks, and that it's all connected. Well, what happens when you have all these different people? They all are able to change the surroundings, the environment that they live in. And the reason why that is different, why I'm saying that is hell, and what heaven is that heaven is controlled by God, and then God doesn't let anybody into that universe without becoming enlightened. The people that are in hell all have a control of their surroundings. So eventually, Elon and his wife get more and more people, but some of those people go crazy, or they don't like what's happening, and they all are conflicting with what the environment is. So that's what it's like out. But eventually, what most likely would happen is that their brains would develop cancer. Now, I believe that cancer is a disease that we'll never be able to cure. The only cure is our spiritual health, and it's something from the metaphysical world. So eventually, Elon's employees will try to contact them, try to contact them, and Elon and his wife won't be able to contact them, and they'll be completely gone and away. They'll be dead. But what we're talking about here is all the atoms and molecules. All the atoms and molecules are the brain and spinal cord, and all the atoms and molecules of all these computers are such configured in such a way so that Elon and his wife can have this experience. But what if I was to say to you that they don't need to have all that stuff, all those together, that they actually, Elon and his wife don't die, but they go into this world of atoms and molecules, and then they disperse, and in other words, they're in hell. And that's what I believe that's what that leads to. So I mean, that's pretty much the ultimate escape, and that's why that's a science or a technology that is not helpful for humans, that we need to focus on being happy in our paradise and be happy living our lives, and then becoming enlightened, and focus in on that all these scientific advancements that we're talking about are not helpful. So that's the meat of that chapter. But now then I go into more about Jesus and why I believe that he did exist and what his message was real, and then more and more, and then I go into detail why there's proof and evidence of his existence, using some references from some other books, and then I take it on a different angle, and I say that there's no reason why not to believe in Jesus, and that you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, and it's just like, hello, why not try to learn a righteous life? Why not believe in Jesus? Why not try to become enlightened? And why not enjoy living in paradise instead of trying to escape? And that's everything that's good, and that's sort of, I use that and go through some other topics, and that I try to conclude the book at the end of the year, Birth of Jesus, and that's it. And so that's sort of the basis of the book, and I hope you enjoyed this film. Thank you.